Morning. Kind of dangerous for me to speak without a clock. So I'll bring Jennifer's watch up here. That'll help me. Open, if you would, to John, the first chapter, please. John chapter 1. And I want to read a brief text there from verse 43, beginning of John 1, if you'll open there with me. John 1, verse 43. It says concerning Jesus that the next day he purposed to go forth into Galilee, and he found Philip. And Jesus said to Philip, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida of the city of Andrew and Peter. And Philip found Nathanael. And he said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses and the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nathanael said to him, "Can any good thing come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him and said to him, "Behold an Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile." Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered and said to him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." And Jesus answered and said to him, "Because I said that I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You shall see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Truly I say to you, you shall see the heavens open, and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." You've probably been in a situation like Nathanael and Philip, either on one side or the other of that conversation, where here Philip is sharing with Nathanael a discovery, something that he has just learned, something that he has just seen, something that he has just found out. It's a piece of information, it's a piece of knowledge, it's a eureka moment that he is excited about and he's excited to share. And in the process of sharing, Nathanael maybe started with a bit of curiosity because he saw the excitement in his friend. He listened with piqued interest because of the kind of enthusiasm that Philip has for the information that he's sharing. And because it's a topic that is meaningful to both of them, Nathanael's just as interested in finding the Messiah and knowing who he is and seeing the fulfillment of the promises as Philip himself is. But as Philip shares who this is, Jesus of Nazareth, suddenly something doesn't fit. Something doesn't click. And Nathanael's response to Philip is less than overwhelming. In fact, it's rather deflating. And so he responds to that piece of information with a question that shows his disdain or his distrust, his suspicion over the piece of information that Philip has just shared. Can any good thing come out of Nazareth? And we get a little window or a little insight into what must have been apparently the reputation of that place in which God decided that His Son Jesus would be raised. The place that would be His homeland, the place that people would identify with Him. He is a Nazarene. And that is something quite unexpected. There's several things that John is doing for us as he opens his gospel. We're in chapter 1 here. And there's a lot said in the Gospel of John about seeing, about being in darkness and coming into light, about recognizing, about finding. There's lots of discovery language that's a part of the Gospel of John. And there's a lot of that that's been a part of this first chapter. And we see it even in this dialogue, and this what happens with Philip and Nathanael, and what happens when Nathanael comes and sees Jesus. Lots of language about seeing and finding and about recognizing things. And so we see that happening here. And part of the purpose of this particular story is showing us about the kind of attitude that's going to be required for us to really see Jesus and for us to really know Him and for us to discover what He has come to show us about God. Earlier in the chapter, the statement is made that no man has seen God at any time, verse 18. The only begotten who is in the bosom of the Father, He has explained Him. And so when we look at Jesus and when we hear Him interacting with people, when we hear Him talking and the things that He says and the things that He's showing, He's explaining things about God to us. And part of Nathanael's difficulty in seeing and comprehending from what Phillip had said, that this idea of the Messiah coming from Nazareth, part of what doesn't make that click is that there's some things that Nathanael doesn't understand about God that he's going to discover, and that he's going to discover more of as he walks with Jesus. There's more that he's going to see, and there's more that's going to be explained to him. As we begin this morning, one of the things I want us to see is there's a little bit of Nathanael in all of us. There are some attitudes that are, I don't know which one is correct, but there's some possible attitudes that could have prompted Nathanael's response to Philip when he speaks of Jesus as coming from Nazareth. And I want you to think about these kind of attitudes because they are the attitudes that can veil God to us. They are the attitudes that can keep us seeing clearly. They're things that really come from a bit of darkness in man's heart that Jesus has come to try to dispel. One of the things that can cause a Nathanael to say to a Philip, Jesus of Nazareth, and to respond, can anything good come out of Nazareth? One of the attitudes that can prompt that is pride. Philip has met Jesus. Nathanael hasn't met Jesus. He doesn't know Him. And yet he's already made a judgment about Him, even though he doesn't know Him. Have you ever experienced that? Of something being said or something being shown, and you either making a judgment before you know or before you see, or somebody making a judgment about you said before they have seen or before they know. And there can be a bit of pride in that. Sometimes that pride comes out of jealousy because here Philip comes something that he's excited to share, that he knows and that he's seen, and Philip's your best friend, and Philip got to see it first. And Philip doesn't deserve to see it first. You do. And so sometimes pride can cause people, when someone shares some new truth or when someone shares with you some good news, sometimes pride can cause us to be jealous or envious of the fact that they got to see it first. And we deserve to see it before they did, or we deserve to know it first. Or sometimes pride can have this wicked fascination or this wicked pleasure in just popping other people's balloons. Do you see people that do that? I mean, someone's got a piece of good news to share about their family or about a new job or about some blessing that has come their way, and they share it with other people, and there's somebody in the group that just likes to go and just completely deflate the good news and the good moment. And I wonder if that's part of what's happening with Nathanael here, is there's just a little bit of pride, and so maybe he's a guy that just likes to pop other people's balloons. And that's what he's done with his friend here. But Philip, I don't know, but I've done some of that, and I've had some of that done to me, where people pop a balloon when there's something that's good to share. A second attitude that can prompt that kind of response is prejudice. And that's very well what's going on in this story. We carry around in us the baggage of our culture. So that there's certain things that we assume about a certain race of people, or certain things that we assume about people who grew up in a certain region, or grew up in a certain town, or grew up in a certain kind of home, or grew up with a certain kind of family. And those become ways that we pigeonhole people and ways that we pigeonhole information. And so we judge the worth of people and the worth of situations and the worth of regions all based on this kind of faulty lens that exists in our current culture. And so apparently there are some ways in which the city of Nazareth is a bit unseemly, or is not as good as, it's not a place that you want to come from. And so the idea of the Messiah coming from Nazareth is just unthinkable. A Nazarene, the Messiah, really? And you can, if that's what's prompting Nathanael's response, then you can even imagine the disdain in his voice as he asks the question back to his friend. And so maybe that's part of what's going on. Presumption is a third thing that could be going on in Nathanael's heart. Presumption is when you think you know all the facts. That you are omniscient about this situation. And so you have put it all together. Nobody can tell you anything new. And so here is Phillip telling him that the Messiah has come from Nazareth. And Nathanael's thinking, then the Messiah doesn't come from Nazareth. He's supposed to be born in Bethlehem. Everybody knows that. And so he just dismisses the information presumptuously because he thinks he knows all about it. He hadn't met Jesus. He doesn't know all the facts. He doesn't know all the story. The fact is Jesus was born in Bethlehem. But unless he digs deeper, unless he finds out more information, unless he's curious enough and open enough to discover more truth, then he's apt to miss the truth because he feels like he already knows it all. Have you ever experienced that? There's a fourth possibility here besides the sin of pride or of prejudice or presumption, and that's just the mistake of just being pessimistic. Some folks have had things happen to them in life, or have witnessed things, or have experienced things. They've known disappointment from people. They've known disappointment in life. And so they just carry around this kind of dark cloud all the time. And so often their hopes have been dashed. Their expectations have been disappointed in some way, either in things that would happen or in people. And so they just have this dark lens. And when they can't imagine any good thing. And so if it's good news, they got to find a way to make it rain. It can't be good. It can't be a happy day. It's got to somehow be dismal. And I don't know if maybe that's a little bit of what's going on with Nathanael, if he's one of those people that just is always pessimistic about stuff. Now, what I want to say to you about all four of those attitudes, I'm not sure which one is at work here in the heart of Nathanael, but I want to say to you that all four of those are darkness. They're all things that keep us from seeing. Pride is a dark motive. And prejudice is a dark way of seeing and of interpreting people and situations and truth. And to walk around with pessimism about what God can do and what is possible with Him is a dark way of seeing. And to have this kind of presumptuous spirit that thinks that you know everything, that too is dark. And so those kinds of attitudes can be very debilitating. They are darkness. And they are not only darkness, they are a contagious darkness. I want you to think about Phillip in the situation, because this is something that just happens a lot. Here is a guy who is a new convert. I mean, he has just found Jesus, and he's so naive that he thinks that everybody's going to be as excited about his discovery as he is. And the first person that he comes and tells, the person that he wants to find first, his closest friend or his dearest relative, and he comes to share it, and what he gets is a needle. Psh, popping the balloon. Have you seen that happen to someone that's a new disciple, a new convert? Have you ever experienced that yourself? And that can be a contagious kind of spirit. I mean, we can deflate the enthusiasm of a new disciple. We can blow up their faith. We can bring shipwreck to someone who's really excited. just because we're a balloon popper, or just because we're pessimistic, or just because we're prejudiced. And so that's what happens to Philip. And that goes on in our world all the time. It's a part of the power of darkness that Jesus has come to dispel. And so this not only darkness, it's a contagious kind of darkness. And there's another element that's a part of that, and that is that there's a bit of universality in that. This is what I mean. When Jesus meets Nathanael, he pays a compliment to him. He says that Nathanael is a good man. He says that he's a guileless man. Now, what I want you to see in that is that good men can make that mistake. Good men can be prejudiced. Good men can carry around pride in their heart. Good men can be pessimistic. Good men can fall into these kind of fallacies. And if good men can do that, then I better be careful, because it can happen to me. I can get into this same kind of darkness. And so there's a great lesson here about the propensity for all of us, because of the world in which we live in, to be influenced by that kind of darkness so that we don't see very well, because we've been affected by the culture in which we live. And so it's dark, it's contagious, it's universal, this problem that we see in Nathanael. There's something more to it, and that's just how debilitating it can be. I mean, it's not just that we don't treat people from Nazareth the way that Nazarenes ought to be treated. We don't really love them like our neighbor. We don't regard them as neighbors. But we can not only hurt people, when we carry around those kind of attitudes and those ways of viewing life and of reacting to truth, when we carry those around, we can miss God. Does that occur to you? I mean, we cannot see Him. It's not just how we see Nazarenes. It's that we may not see Him. And that's the risk for Nathanael, is that if he carries this with him, and if this doesn't change, he might miss God. And so that's how debilitating the darkness is that comes from pride and from prejudice, from being pessimistic, from carrying around presumption where we think we know all the truth. Now, I want you to be impressed now with how Jesus confronts Nathanael, because he uses this situation as a teachable moment to teach Nathanael something and to teach Phillip something. They start coming to Jesus, and Nathanael has just made this remark, "Can any good thing come out of Nazareth?" And Phillip says, "Come and see." And so they get on their way, and here they are approaching. And before either one of them can say a word, I mean, there's no introductions. Philip doesn't say, "I want you to meet my friend Nathanael." He doesn't say to Nathanael, "I want you to meet Jesus." Nobody gets a chance to say anything, because Jesus speaks first. And he says, "Behold, an Israelite in whom is no guile." Now, I want you to put yourself in Nathanael's shoes. I mean, this was the guy you were just talking about. And now this guy that you were just talking about is talking about you. He doesn't know Jesus. He's never met him before, and yet this is the greeting that he gets when he comes to him. And so they've never met, and yet Jesus is talking to him as if they're familiar, as if he knows all about him. And not only is he talking as if he knows all about him, but he has just welcomed him or greeted him the way that you would if you were paying honor to someone that was your dearest friend. I mean, he pays him a compliment, but it's the highest kind of compliment. He says, "An Israelite in whom is no guile." He just spoke to his character. He didn't say, "You're a nice guy." Didn't just say he's a good person. I mean, he really said something overwhelming about Nathanael, as if he were introducing him to some audience to speak about spirituality or something. He says something very commendable about him. Now, it's provocative, because Nathanael says, how do you know me? But think if you had just been before class or whatever, or after class, you were talking in the hall about somebody, and you said something that was just a little bit raised a question about their character or about their value or their worth, and you come through the side door and you run right into the person you're just talking about, and you think, I hope they didn't hear. I hope they didn't hear what I was saying in the hall, and I probably overstated that. I didn't really mean that. Have you ever been in an embarrassing moment like that? Well, here's what's happened to Nathanael is he's just insulted the guy that he's now meeting, and the guy that he insulted has just paid him the highest kind of compliment. Now, would that cut to the quick a little bit? And so I can't imagine but Nathanael being a bit convicted and a bit embarrassed about this situation now that he's just meeting Jesus. And so he asks the question, how do you know me? And if Nathanael was already feeling a bit exposed, if he was already feeling a bit embarrassed and a bit convicted, he's about to really feel a bit exposed. Because Jesus says, Philip, or rather Nathanael, before Philip called you, I saw you when you were under the fig tree. Now, I don't know what in the world that means. I don't have the foggiest idea. I don't know what Nathanael was doing under the fig tree. I don't know when Philip was under the fig tree. I don't know whether this was something that just happened, like within the day. This could have been something that happened years ago. But when Jesus says, I saw you under the fig tree, He doesn't have to say anything more. He has just said enough for Nathanael to know that nobody knows about the fig tree. Nobody knows, and we don't know. And that information is purposely left out so that we don't know. But I want to tell you who does know. Nathanael knows. And not only does Nathanael know, he knows that somehow this fella from Nazareth, this Nazarene, knows about the fig tree. Now, I don't know if he was hiding and watching Jesus. I don't know if he was under the fig tree and he had a dream. I don't know if he was under the fig tree and he was meditating. I don't know if he was there and he was praying. I don't know if he was wrestling with some hard decision that he was trying to make. But when Jesus says the word fig tree, He doesn't have to say any more because Nathanael knows all about it. And all of a sudden he comes unraveled in front of Jesus. Because here is somebody that knows something that's deeply personal and about a moment that's deeply personal. And he sees this fellow has a window into his world. Maybe you've had some places like this. I don't know if the fig tree was this kind of thing for Nathanael or not. But there was a sycamore tree that grew down by the creek on Cave Creek Road where I grew up. And there were lots of times as I was growing up that I climbed that big old sycamore tree. And it had great big broad leaves. And a little boy could climb the tree and nobody could see him there. And I could go up there and just be by myself. And I could look at the whole neighborhood. And there was lots of thinking that I did in the sycamore tree about life. There was a place across the street on the Johnson's farm, and Mr. Johnson he'd let the field grow up where he'd cut his hay. And there was the creek that ran through our yard, went under the road, and it meandered through the Johnson's place. And there was a place along the creek where Mr. Johnson had cut down a tree, and he'd kind of hollowed out a smooth spot in it, so it made like a nice little bench along the creek. And I don't know if he really cut that down so that it would be a bench or not. That's the way I treated it. And there were times that I'd go over and find that little spot along the creek on the Johnson's property, and I could lay down, and the grass, the hay as it grew up would be high enough that nobody could see me there. And I could lay on that log next to the creek and hear the water babble and look up at the sky and the clouds floating by. And I could pray or I could think about life. And nobody knew what I said there and what I thought there except for God. Now, Nathanael's had something. I don't know if it was like that, but it was something like that was personal, that only God would know about. And if Jesus knows about it, then, 1 and 1 makes 2. What he thought about Nazareth And the Messiah coming from there is a lot worse. It's not the Messiah that's come from Nazareth. It's God that came from Nazareth. It's a lot worse, Nathanael. God is a Nazarene. And what a revelation for Nathanael to get that, to see that. Here are the things then that we learn about God in this story, that Nathanael comes to see about God, and that I've got to see about God too. Number one, I need to see, in answer to the question, can any good thing come from Nazareth? That God is a God who can make good things come from sorry places. And no matter what you think about Nazareth, no matter what kind of prejudices you carry in your heart, no matter what kind of pride would look down with disdain on Nazarenes, no matter what your presumptions are, no matter how pessimistic you are about life, God can take Nazareth and He can make something good come out of it. A sorry place like that. And not only can God make good things come from sorry places, but God can make good things come from sorry people. And so He's going to do that in Nazareth. There's a little jab that Jesus makes in His remark to Nathanael that we might miss when He says to him, "Behold, an Israelite in whom is no guile." The word guile there is the word deceit. If you know the story of Israel, of Jacob, he was a chronic liar. I mean, the family started with Jacob, who was a liar. He lied to his blind father in order to swindle his brother's birthright. He was full of guile. He was full of deceit. And so there's another jab that's a part of Jesus welcoming Nathanael when He comes to him, because Nathanael has just talked as if nothing good can come out of Nazareth, but that works both ways. I mean, you're a son of Jacob. And he didn't presume that means that he's going to be a liar the way Jacob was a liar. And so Jesus really does talk to him and treat him with great favor and with great grace. And God took sorry Jacob and He made him the father of Israel. God can take sorry people and He can make good things come. And not only can He do that with sorry places and sorry people, but He can do it with sorry situations. And I don't know if that's a part of what happened under the fig tree. And if there was some situation that Nathanael was wrestling with. But there are going to be stories all through the Gospel of John where God comes into a sorry situation and He changes everything. He makes it good. In fact, He's going to do that soon, He could say to Nathanael, in a city near you. Because the very next story that's told in the Gospel of John, in John chapter 2, is a story of Jesus going to Cana of Galilee and turning water into wine. Just guess who it is that comes from Cana. It's Nathanael's hometown. We learn at the end of the book, chapter 21 and verse 2. And so Jesus, who can take sorry places and sorry people and sorry situations and make them into something good, is about to do that at the place where Nathanael lives. Would you want Jesus coming and talking to all the, mingling with the people where you grew up, who know all your stories, who know your history, who knows your background? Well, I mean, Jesus has already taken care of all that because He knows secrets that nobody knows about Nathanael. And so He's coming to his hometown. Now, the thing that Nathanael needs to see and that I need to see in all of this is this. The God who can take sorry places and sorry people and sorry situations and make them good. It's the God I need. It's the God I need. You see, there's something in Nathanael's talk about the Messiah that regards Nazareth as being too low a place for the Messiah to come into and to make His presence known. But the God that Nathanael is introduced to is a God who goes to Nazareth. He's a God that will make a sorry place like Nazareth His home, and sorry people like Nazarenes His people, and sorry situations that He encounters there, situations that He thrusts Himself in the middle of so that He can make them good, so that He can make them better. And Nathanael needs a God like that, not just Nazarenes. We all live in Nazareth. We all have some Nazarene in us. We all need a God who can take our sorriness, and not just moral sorriness, but our heart that is sorry about our sorriness, and make it something good. And so the God that Nathanael met, that his friend Phillip introduced him to, was the God that Nathanael needs to know. And Jesus says to him, Nathanael, if you saw that today, then you ain't seen nothing yet. Because the heavens are going to be opened up, and you are going to see stuff that the Son of Man will do and will be done with Him, that are going to be it's going to be the fulfillment of the things that the fathers like Jacob only dreamed about, because that was Jacob's dream. You're going to see it in your day, and you're going to experience it, because God is here. He's here right in the middle of Nazareth, and He's going to make it good. Now, don't you love that He's our God? That He's our Lord, that's who's visited us, and that's who wants to save us and redeem us. He wants to make us His people. If you don't know Him this morning, then you need to get the darkness out of your heart so that you can see Him, the things that get in the way. If you're not growing in Him, then you need to remove those things that would impede your seeing Him better, your growing in Him. And those things that He addresses in the heart of Nathanael are the kinds of things that keep us from seeing Him and knowing Him as well as He would like us to. Won't you come to Him this morning as together we stand and as we sing?